A man named George Tyler who put a lot of money into Garvey's hand. He was a former investor. One day, he came to see Garvey at one of the UNIA offices. George Tyler stepped in and started shooting. So as he's in there bussing, Amy Ashwood, who was only Garvey's girlfriend at the time before he married her, jumped in front of the shooter to protect Garvey and tackled him down a flight of stairs. Garvey was hit 3 times. The next day, Garvey still went to his lecture and spoke in Philadelphia, all bandaged up and everything. The UNIA was growing at an alarming rate, and the Back to Africa movement was huge. Garvey was big time. There were over 500 chapters of the UNIA. And now here comes J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover sent all types of agents to infiltrate the UNIA.
Hoover's agents were in the audience at Carnegie Hall when Garvey bragged that the UNIA would soon be strong enough to exact its own form of justice.
When those crackers lynch a Negro below the Mason-Dixon line, since it is not safe to lynch a white man in any part of America, we shall press the button and lynch him in Africa.
The agent reported that Garvey's address was met with great applause and much excitement.
Garvey felt like black folks needed their own ships. There was the White Star Line, the Irish had the Green Star Line, so Garvey created the Black Star Line. Not only just to help with transportation, but to also sell goods. The SS Yarmouth was the first ship purchased, and Garvey renamed the ship the Frederick Douglass.
Welcome to another episode of the Nick and CJ Show. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. What's up, Nick?
What's poppin', my friends, my family? We are back. I am back once again. I was gone yesterday, but CJ killed it as always solo. So it's good to be back. Good to be back. Thursday is always a great day for RBN. Me and CJ, we always come on early, talk some shit. Sabian's JB show is coming on right after when we're done at 6 p.m. Eastern time when we are finished. So Thursday, you guys always get a lot of great content on the channel. And I know CJ, you want to. I want to make sure we promote this, put this out. Savvy JB show's coming up next. Let's take care of our brother JB. Let's take care of our brother JB. We're going through some hard times. So make sure you got what's the cash out for the JB fundraiser?
Let me throw it up for you. Shoot, it may not be here. So it's scrolling at the bottom there.
Yeah, I'll make sure.
No, that's not the right one. So give me a second and I'll put the right one up. Give me a second.
Yeah, last fundraiser we kind of dropped the ball. We're not letting it happen this time. So let's take care of.
So let me just give a quick update. So JB again is going through a little bit of hard time with his housing. So we're trying to take care of a comrade. So we launched a JB fundraiser a couple of days ago. And if you are able to contribute, and as you can see on the screen, this is for housing. And the goal is $5,000, and where you can send it is Mutual Aid Forever. Let me put that up on the screen here. So I put Venmo, but yeah, Venmo, Cash App, Mutual Aid Forever. I spelled that wrong. I'll correct that. There's not a special spelling for it. So Mutual Aid for. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, Mutual Aid Forever. That's what it is. So make sure you guys. Help our brother JB. So
right, and so far, Nick, let me give you an update. We've already raised over $500 between our PayPal, between these two, the Cash App and the Venmo. So I just have to get the grand total, but I do know it's over $500. So thank you to those that have contributed already. We're going to compile the names of those that want their name to be public, of those that have contributed. just as a thank you to everybody that's helping out our comrade JB. So the JB fundraiser, and back to you, Nick.
Yeah, that's the community building that RBN takes pride in building on right now. We have to separate ourselves from capitalist system. We got a lot of subjects that we're gonna talk about. One of them gonna be strikes. We always love talking about that. But before we get started, I want to introduce. We're gonna have Briahna Gray who joins us. She hosts a debrief on Call In. It's a great show. If you guys haven't joined, Call In and talk to Briahna. She also hosts on The Hill Rising. Also hosts the Bad Faith podcast. Always great to talk to you, Bree. Welcome back to RBN.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
There's a lot.
What's up, Bree?
And I can't wait to get your opinion on a few things. We're gonna start with the strikes of the railroads right now. And I want to frame it this way. I want you guys to understand, because I always frame everything in terms of the class war. So this is not surprising to me. I want you guys to understand this is a capital strike. And now workers are starting to respond. Think about what they was asking for. And Bree, I want to ask for you to clarify more and get your take on this issue. They were asking for time off for medical care, CJ. What kind of barbaric country is this?
Yeah. I actually think that's the reason why they had to eventually, I don't want to jump the story, but I think that's the reason why, because they knew it was such an outrageous thing to kind of stand on. Crazy. So I think that's why they folded. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you right here, Bree. But we live in a deeply barbaric and uncivilized society where, and I'm gonna show you guys some examples here soon. People are putting the onus on the workers. We need to reframe the argument. This has been a strike from the capitalists. I heard there was this guy, he was on Democracy Now!, and he was talking about how back in the day, his family, they all used to work in the railroad. And fathers who work on the railroad, they tell the son to join them because it was a job with great benefits. Well, you can take a ton of time off. He said you can take like a week off. Yeah, you work a lot, but you can kind of make your own schedule. But then the capitalists came in and they said, yo, this is actually very bad for business. You know, this freedom, this mental health that we value in our workers, bad for capital. So they did a strike when they took their rights, when they take their workers' rights away. And now you have the society trying to put the onus on the workers itself. So I want to pass it to Bree, because I want your thoughts on the rail strike. It had been news. You did great coverage on the Hill as well. I want to pass it to you, Bree. Anything you want to add to the conversation? Anything you want to add in terms of?
No, just I think your insight is completely right. That because the demands were so minimal, right? This wasn't even really a wages issue. This was really about the fact that because of the nature of railroading, in particular, the kind of innovations that they've put into place over the last few decades that have made the process more quote unquote efficient, where the schedules are very, very tight in order to not cost, the railroad owners any money, that these people don't even get anything in the realm of what we consider to be a weekend or a 40-hour work week, such that if you calculate the number of days a 9-to-5 worker is getting off a year, it's like 100 days, right? Because there's like weekends plus vacation time and all those other kinds of things. But even if we just can include weekends, it's a lot of days. These people get 15 days total in a year, 15 days total in a year. And all of the testimony from workers, and I really encourage people to listen to the coverage that Max Alvarez over the Real News has been doing, and some others who have interviewed actual workers here. They talk about not being able to go to weddings because they expect you to take your, one vacation day, have it scheduled well in advance at the beginning of the year, and they don't have any exceptions, that they're not able to take time off when they get sick, or to schedule time to go to a doctor's appointment so they cannot become sick. And it was interesting to see the coverage when I woke up this morning, because I'd already planned to do my radar today about this. And when I woke up this morning, there was news of, a tentative deal having been struck. And the reporting said that Joe Biden in particular was quote unquote animated by the story.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to that.
Of how draconian the time off policy was. And I wonder, what would have happened if they had been asking for just a raise? What if they had been asking for something that the capitalist class has been more adept at kind of writing off as like demanding too much? And what if we couldn't draw the contrast that so many of these wonderful labor reporters Gurley over at the Washington Post, and Max Alvarez and Jeff Stein, and a lot of people have been doing great reporting on this. What would have happened if we hadn't been able to tee up the contrast between the record profits these companies have been earning over the course of the last 2 years during the pandemic, at the same time that all of these people were being lauded as essential workers? What if we hadn't been able to draw such a strong contrast between the really crumbs that they're asking for and the enormous profits of people like Warren Buffett, who own these railroads?
Yeah, it's
animated back then, Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna show I'm gonna get CJ. I'm gonna get you in here and for your thoughts as well, because I'm gonna show you just a reaction of Larry Kudlow from Fox, just to give you an example of how they put the onus on the workers. They talk about how essential they're like, oh my god, you guys can't do this. You guys are so important. This is a travesty. Okay, how about give them better benefits? How about make these people the breadwinners of society instead of these CEOs? So they make our argument for us. But CJ, before I continue, I want to get you in here as well if you want to have any takes.
Yeah, I wanted to speak briefly to the point that I was making, and both of you are sort of talking about too, and that is, I think that because the reporting initially, railroad strike could be happening, they never really report the specific details. They would always insert, oh, they got a pay raise, because that's the thing that everybody kind of popularized as the thing to go to. And they would never talk about the details of working conditions. So I felt like they were sort of publicly forced to do this, because if it were to come out that the supply chain is being held up because the company doesn't want to give people time off for their kids' wedding, you know how that would look. So it was almost like a reckoning of how ridiculous being these capitalist terms would be in this era, this post-pandemic sort of era. So that's why I think I don't think Joe Biden or anybody else, came in and did anything in particular. It was just the realization that, wait, when word gets out that what's holding this up, that we're not going to come out on the good end.
Yeah, workers did this. Good labor reporting did this. I can't say enough. At Lauren Gurley, I'm sorry, I was blocking her first name. Lauren Gurley getting that gig at the Washington Post and being able to have front page stories about this. And I know I imagine that there was probably some jockeying about what even went into those stories. But so often, people were complaining about the fact that one of the main stories of the New York Times characterized the shutdowns that were happening over the last couple of days. The railroad companies decided to preemptively start to shut down routes in order to basically threaten the government into forcing the workers to concede, to show them basically this is what we can do. And even those delays were preemptively being characterized as a consequence of the strike. And I think Jonah Furman and some other labor reporters online were like, no, actually, this is a clear demonstration of this. It's not the workers that are causing the inconvenience here. It is, in fact, the companies. And in the United States, generally speaking, we have a real problem. This was the subject of my radar. We have a real problem with blaming workers who are asking for the bare minimum for the inconveniences that result from a strike that you do not see in other parts of the world. There is a more of a knee-jerk solidarity. I'm not saying everybody in Europe or France or wherever is perfect and always is pro-worker. But when I was there over the summer, during the peak of these labor strikes, these transit strikes, and at the peak of vacation season, it was like a week before Bastille Day, right? People had places to go, places to be. If we were in traffic and we said something casual like, "Oh, there's a lot of traffic," they were like, "Yes, there is a strike, but this is what happens. It's a strike. People need to get paid." And it was like so refreshing. And here, I talk to even liberal. I talk to leftists sometimes who are like, "Oh yeah, I support the workers, but boy, is this annoying." Like, no.
It's such a different approach. It's a different approach to how you understand your way of life and what it should be, and the boundaries that are set on it by capital. Go ahead, Nick.
So I was watching our enemies, like I told you guys I do. I watch in order to become a better political commentator. I gotta see what our enemies are saying, what they're saying in neoliberal news. And what I have noticed is, I'm gonna show you guys an extreme example with Larry Kudlow here. But if you watch an MSNBC or CNN segment, MSNBC, who people deemed the left, they was very careful not to say whether the workers should get their demands or not.
Right.
It's a very clear pattern. And me and CJ, we do propaganda report. We break down, so we can't help but notice all the small stuff that corporate media does. And they did a segment, I think it was I don't know the name of the host, but they were just talking about the strike, talking about the devastating effects on society it will have. Never once mentioned whether workers should be paid to take medical days off or not. That never came up. It's just, these workers got demands.
Yeah.
Should Biden force them to concede? It did never pin towards the workers. And I can't help but notice that. And I want you guys to know that was on MSNBC and CNN. I'm going to show you guys the stream version. We're going to watch maybe like 2 or 3 minutes. Just so you guys can see the plane meltdown, which I'm going to explain afterwards, actually makes our point. And I'm going to explain that point later. Give me a second. Let me share the screen. Get a little out of here. Here we go.
You excited for our reaction, Nick, or what?
Yeah, because I was holding on. I didn't want to share this one to you because I want to see your reaction.
Right, having you on, Larry. It's so great to see you. Larry, how worried are you about this railroad strike? It looks like it could happen. It could hit the White House, the midterms, the economy really hard.
Well, I agree with that, Liz. Things are in very poor economic shape right now between inflation and recession. And if they go out on strike, it's going to make everything worse. All right. Supply shortages will reappear. Prices are going to go up. People are going to get laid off. It's not a good story. Nothing here is a good story, I must say, in general, but this will make it worse.
How confident are you that the White House can fix it and Congress can do anything? You look at the data coming in, Larry, the Trucking Association is now saying that they're going to need 460,000 long-haul trucks running daily if this happens, but we already have a shortage of 80,000 truckers.
Well, that's right. I mean, you're way short on the truckers. Trucking, by the way, I think carries something like 75% of all the goods that flow inside the United States. And they're not going to be able to pick up the slack if the freights go out of business or if they go on strike or for how long. I don't think the White House there's nothing they can do, to be honest with you. It's an odd story because wages have been rising almost too much in some cases, but I'm happy with higher wages.
What? So
it's almost too much in some cases, but I'm happy with higher wages.
There's so much wrong with that. So many layers.
Yeah, I want to pass it to you, CJ and Bree, but can we take a second to admire the extreme irony of these two conservatives begging the Biden White House, the government, to get involved? Government, these are the conservatives. Government.
They open by saying this is bad for Democrats, right? Like, isn't that the whole point? This is going to be bad for election chances. This is bad for inflation. This is bad for Biden. So where does the twist happen when suddenly Republicans aren't rooting for outcomes that are bad for Biden? No, what you realize tacitly in the context of that segment is that the corporate interests are linked across parties and it's bad for business. It's simply bad for business.
Absolutely. And it's never that. Why isn't the approach though in these? Now this is hypothetical, but not hypothetical, but rhetorical. But why aren't they ever from the point of view of the worker? Why aren't they saying, just having a worker saying, hey, we don't have an under reasonable demand, we're just saying this? Like, it's never that. It's that if these striking workers, they never give a reason. It's always absent in the story to fill in, to make it seem like it's unreasonable. It's like they don't possibly have reasonable demands, but they're going to make all of us feel this pain. So it's very interesting in the propaganda game.
And I show that one because Larry Kudlow is a clown. It's always funny watching this dude. But I cannot stress enough, even though that was a more comedic version, I've seen this all over corporate news when I watch all different coverage of this. And you guys will see what the neocons are saying, the Democrat shit-lived, the Ukraine proxy war pushers are saying. This is unbelievable. I literally saw this maybe like 10 minutes before I got on stream. This is unbelievable. They like saying the quiet part out loud. Like, you see the Ukraine flag right here. This guy said rail workers going on strike because slow weapons and equipment deliveries to Ukraine and American troops. And not just food and packages, and not just about you guys. What about our war? And then this fascist here, Adam Kissinger. Am I getting that right?
Oh, this is not satire. This is not a joke account.
No,
They're not making fun of it. This is real.
These are real people. 640,000 followers. This dude's insane. I've seen his tweets. This dude is
wow.
Look at this. There cannot be a rail strike, and the federal government must intercede to prevent this. This is the Zelensky Democrats, guys. You know, Zelensky, who just he took away workers' bargaining rights. So you guys see why they're all on the same page?
Yeah.
So I'll show you guys both sides. You guys see how all the capitalists, no matter what party you're on, they all got bad taste. But Bree, CJ, do you want to take that on before I move to the next part?
I mean, he's actually proving the broader point about why these kind of labor actions are so important. I feel like I want to respond to that tweet with one of those like Jack Nicholson nodding gifts. Like, yes, like exactly. Like if we have these kind of objections to endless war, if we feel like the government unwarrantedly spends $70 billion on Ukraine, but won't spend $80 billion in canceling our medical debt, if we feel like these contrasts are being ignored, or these inconsistencies are being ignored by our government, we don't live in a democracy, we live in an oligarchy, then this is what, people like you here on RBN who've been talking, insistently, and I think rightly so, about the power of strikes and general strikes more broadly. This becomes the only mechanism available to you.
Yes.
That's, precisely because it is outside of electoral politics and traditional democracy.
To that point, let me make this point. That point, this is what I was saying also in the stream yesterday, because I kind of briefly covered an article. I think it's a World Socialist website. I've covered an article from them on this, and that is, this illustrates the power of general strike. So for those that are kind of like, what could happen? Like, this is a perfect, and what's perfect about it is, it's an updated version of it, because it's a union where the leadership is joining the capitalists, but the rank and file is saying, oh, no. We're not doing that, because that's what happened in this situation while we're even here, because the leadership wanted to just capitulate and say, okay, we were fine with the raise, but the rank and file, I can't remember, it was in the 70s, 78% or something, 79% voted for 2 strikes. So it was out of the leadership's hand, but this is what it looks like. You see them like squirming, and if we had targeted strikes with targeted industry specifically, this would be one of the industries we would target. It's a complete shutdown of the capital, and when capitalists are not making money, that's when we can negotiate things. That's when the beginning can happen for this revolution.
It's going to be very fun and interesting to see RBN get vindicated as time continued to go on, because we had our General Strike Summit, and I remember very smugly people with much bigger platforms than us asking us why are we even having this conversation. This is not going to happen. So just know. Go ahead, Bree.
In fact, a lot of the people, and I have alluded to people who are doing good labor coverage, some of those very same people, at least one of those people, was very negative about the general strike and the prospect of talking about a general strike when it was out there. In fact, I subscribed to their Substack and unsubscribed because I was frustrated about it. You can disagree strategically, but this kind of like punching down when people are just trying to familiarize themselves with ideas and historical precedents, so that when the time comes, even if the time isn't now, when the time comes, people need to be ready. This is not going to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like there, even within the labor context, there is a lot, perhaps especially within the labor context, there's a lot of gatekeeping by kind of traditional organizers who, I don't know, we're all coming to terms with the roles that we're playing in this space, and obviously their expertise is invaluable, but it is a little strange to see so much pushback at the idea of platforms like yours doing, I think, the important work of hipping people to different alternative strategies that ultimately we're going to have to rely on at some point in the struggle.
I can't help. I'm gonna make it real quick. I can't help but bring it up. Because good for him, but Hassan Piker had Chris Smalls on his podcast, and Chris Smalls was like, "I'll call for a general strike," and Hassan Piker in his audience was like, "Hell yes, general strike!" He was the same guy who criticized us for doing the same. Because we had labor organizers on our show, which called for a general strike, and he said that was a joke. And then he did the same thing months later. Guess who was there first? That's all I'm gonna say. So I'm gonna move on.
And you know what I loved about, I mean, just to talk about it, because every time I reflect on that General Strike Summit, it's what the two labor leaders who happened to be on strike at the time, the one in Massachusetts, the Nurses Association, and then of course the Kellogg strike, where we had Beidelman on from the Kellogg strike, and I forget one of the union negotiators on, and both of them were like, yeah, we're for a strike, yeah, we're for Medicare for all. So, and these were people, I don't necessarily know the guy from Kellogg, but he didn't seem like a Democrat. But the nurse was a Democrat, and he was like, I told my local Democrats, I'm not voting anymore for the Democrats. I'm voting third party. I'm voting Green Party. Go ahead, Nick.
You want to know what else was interesting about our General Strike Summit too? We had these labor organizers on, like the Kellogg strike leader on, and I can tell we asked them questions that no other media did, because we asked this guy the question.
He was kind of surprised.
We was like, "Well, will you be?" I still remember this. I need to clip it. We said, "Will you be open with working with other industries in forming a general strike?" And I remember when I asked him, he was like, "That's actually a pretty good idea." It's like no one ever even proposed that to him. And he said, that's when he said, yeah, I actually would be down for that. That's why I put my tweet that went pretty viral where I was like, we had a labor strike leader call for a general strike. So these are ideas that the left need to be talking about. So it never made any sense why anyone would decry that. Anyway.
And imagine, this isn't over, by the way. This tentative agreement, that they reached overnight.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
It's not over. And what they've gotten is crumbs, right? Like the agreement is over them having like 1 day vacation. I'm obviously nobody's labor leader and not privy to what's been going on. So I certainly am not speaking with any authority here, but just from a broad strategic lens, imagine a world where we had an audience, like a broader community in this country that was primed to understand the possibilities of a general strike that could potentially be organizing and capitalizing on this moment across sectors, because frankly, they deserve a lot more than 1 day off. And there are a lot of other sectors who have varying degrees of an ability to affect the economy, right? And it's their ability to affect the economy that makes their demand so powerful. Who could be capitalizing on this moment to gain more for the broader community as well. But that is a conversation now that we're trying to piece together in the shadow of this moment that's kind of broken through to the mainstream news. Like, imagine if we had seeded the ground more carefully before, which is why I just want to say again, you guys were right about the General Strike Summit. I was very proud to be able to join in as part of that effort. And I am very appreciative of the work. And I noticed very much the work that is being done over here on RBN. It's why, I was so happy to have that extended conversation with you, CJ, on the debrief. It's why I just reached out to you, Nick, and Sabby on Bad Faith Podcast. It's why I really pushed the producers to have Sabby on, to have them on.
We appreciate that. Yep.
Yeah, on Rising. And I look forward to seeing a lot more RBN people coming through Rising as well, because you guys have a really prescient and I think important perspective.
Yeah, I just must say, because I analyzed that, I went over of course I was going to take care of that or do a segment on that interview. And it was great. Like, Sabby, I mean, did you give her the questions ahead of time? It was like she didn't flinch. She did not flinch at all, or anything like that. It was just like right on, and that's why I was like, she had to have had the questions ahead of time. There's no way.
I know Sabby, and I know what you guys talk about over here, and I know the perspectives that you articulate, and they're very similar to my own. So I know. I mean, I don't have to give someone questions to kind of know where they're going to go with a conversation. I specifically wanted Sabby to come on to talk about the AOC article, because I'd watched your segment on the AOC article. I knew that she was going to reflect the kind of takes that I have on about AOC on Rising, but I think it's important for the audience to realize that it's not just me. That there is a broader left community that I think I am reflecting in some ways, not in all ways, but that they can see that I'm not just a one-off, and that they can get critiques of a certain kind of weaponized identity politics and other things like that from other credible voices on the left, and let them know that there's opportunities for them to be heard that don't require them going down a kind of right-wing rabbit hole.
That's why I was smiling. I was in such a great mood watching that.
Yeah, that was great.
I like for real. I was like, I had a smile on my face the whole time. I was about to cover. I'm glad CJ did, and I love the way that you cover it, because when we started RBN, we had a very strong and strict vision, and Bree, you was able to break through that ceiling, and that's great. But I know there's this giant lack of Black voices, but especially Black women. That's why we tried. We had Finney, Josana, and now Sabby. And to see Sabby on Hill Rising, it was a great moment, because that's exactly why we want to start RBN. Because I just know there's a giant perspective that's just being ignored. And when I'm gonna pass to you, CJ, because with the way you covered it was great. Because a lot of the professional managerial class, the people that been trying their best to lock us out of discourse, you said this in your coverage, they're not gonna have a good time when we can't be denied any longer. This perspective won't be denied. But CJ, I want your take, and now we'll move on to the rest of the story.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Bree, how do you view, or how do you see, what's your interpretation or your take, however you want to take it, in how RBN has been received, or how the effect or the impact RBN or perspective on the left media? How has that or I don't want to, yeah, I'll just leave it there. Could you speak to that point, please?
Yeah, look, I am very aware of the different standards. Well, this is subjective, obviously, but it seems to me that there are different and unfair standards for certain people in this left media space versus others, with respect to who's considered to be credible, who's considered to be legitimate, who's invited to certain kind of spaces. And, I experienced that myself. I 4 years ago was sending freelance pieces to like Jacobin, and like no one was writing me back. Do you know what I mean? So it was Current Affairs that first published me, that gave me kind of a spot on the map. And then frankly, it was Michael Brooks inviting him to, I think what was the 4th episode of his show. That was a real breakthrough moment for me. And I think several other Black leftists have pointed to Michael Brooks as being one of the few people in the space that were not gatekeepers and that were happy to put people on. I first heard of like Trevor Bouillot from Champagne Sharks on Michael's show. I know that he put Malika Jabali on his show, who's now, I think, editor-in-chief at Essence or something like that. And she's like a really hardcore socialist that came up in one of those like socialist commune type of things, like all of this type of stuff. So I always want to take every opportunity to help people in that way, especially when, frankly, like I just really sincerely enjoy your content. And even if there's some particular issue that I may not agree about or may not know as much about, I'm informed and I'm challenged. And it feels a lot more kind of visceral and connected to what people authentically are feeling, especially in working class spaces, than a lot of other places on the left. And I think that's probably intimidating to some of the kind of more PMC styled people on the left, myself included. But I, for one, am very grateful for it and hope to have more opportunities to do what I can with my own little platform to help more and more people know what RBN is all about.
Why do you think you, and it's literally, I'm thinking of only 2 and I can't think of more than 2 right now. Why do you think you, and you're admittedly in the PMC, you're a PMC, and Case are able to maneuver freely and be accepted in 2 camps, revolutionary camps and reformist camps? I can't think of anyone else. So if there's ever going to be some sort of coalition for single issue targeted issues, because that's the only way a reformist and a revolutionist can come together. It's not for broad things, but it's targeted. It's for the bridging is going to, and I always tell this to Case, I'm like, it's going to be you, Case, that's going to bridge this and Bree. But the question is, why do you feel that is? Because any other PMC in this space, like it doesn't exactly get the same sort of respect. And I don't mean RBN space, I mean in the space of as being as radical as we are, they don't get the same respect as you do. Why do you think that is, in Case?
It's a really good question. I think rightly or wrongly, people care about tone and respectability politics a lot. And there is a way that you can get away with saying all kinds of things if you say it the right way. and if you present the right way and if you have the right credentials. And again, that's not right or fair, but that's the way,
Right.
the world is. And so I know that sometimes people in the more revolutionary circles are frustrated with me. They think that I should, shout back at, let's say, Cenk Uygur, or that I should, pop off on somebody in an interview on bad faith. And I respect that desire. And I'm not always confident that my strategy is the best in all circumstances.
I actually disagree with that. I think everyone has a role. And we talked about it before. You're like this bridge where you can have these conversations with the revolutionary side. You also can talk to the reformists. And I saw your interview you did. I'm fucking blank on the guy's name. But you guys were talking about lesser to evilism in a way.
Oh, Jim Zogby.
Yeah. So you in that conversation, we're gonna talk about it later. You make a strong case for a third party, and you bring the arguments you will hear from the reformist, from the revolutionary side of the left, that usually the reformists try their best not to hear. And that would drive us crazy because people never even ask.
That is so true. That's so true.
So that's why I never understood any frustration with you. I don't expect many people to be as far left as I am, but I do see you serving as a role as someone who is accepted by the reformist left, and you can give them facts that's why they don't want us on. They don't want to hear that argument for a third party. And in that interview with the guy, I keep blanking his name, but you keep hammering.
Yeah,
you keep hammering the arguments over and over again. And like we suspected, they really don't have a counter argument to that. But any last thoughts, and I'll get back to the story. Any last thoughts, Bree?
I mean, that's the thing. I genuinely, respect and appreciate what Dr. Zogby's been going through, right? Like, the reason that I am so confident, or relatively confident, about there being a need for an alternative approach to what people have been trying before is because people like him have been trying really hard and dedicating their lives to working with an inside strategy since he was literally a senior advisor to Jesse Jackson's first presidential campaign. But for him, kind of being a part of the test kitchen and trying his way for so long, I might still be ambivalent about whether or not we should dedicate more resources to doing the inside strategy. So when I talk to him, it is from a sincere place of respect. But it also is frustrating because no one should know more than him how rigged the DNC is. He is a DNC. He's on the committee. He's been on the executive committee, which is a very rare thing for progressives to be because it's an appointment process by the head of the DNC, which is usually a Democratic Party acolyte. He got a seat initially because of his position with the Jesse Jackson campaign and has been a lone progressive on there for a very long time and has been privy to everything. And the reason that I had him on the show this week was because he introduced a resolution to get dark money out of politics, specifically the Democratic primaries, because all this dark money has been used to kill the progressive movement, right? To the extent that there are a lot of people arguing for an inside game and that we can just elect more Ilhan Omars, we've seen that even the Ilhan Omars are almost getting kicked out of their seats because all of the dark money, all of the AIPAC money has been very effective in targeting them and helping their opponents. So I say to him, all that you've seen over the decades and what you're looking at right now, why are you so confident that this inside strategy is going to be more successful than an outside strategy? I'm not saying the outside strategy is going to be easy. I don't know what the odds are, but I'm increasingly confident that the odds of the inside strategy are approaching nil. How do you wrestle with that? And I think that for people who are already where we are, hearing that dialogue does a lot more to convince them that they need to take third party and outsider strategies more seriously than me just saying, fraud squad or whatever. And I think there's a place for that stuff too.
Very well done.
I'm really angry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very well done. Because I listened to the conversation and you presented a lot of arguments that we made on here, and I didn't hear a counter rebuttal. And something that me and CJ we always laugh about on here. These people will admit the flaw in their strategy that we point out. This guy said it during your interview. I don't know if you noticed this, but also David Schroeder would say this as well. Well, they would say stuff like this. They would say, yeah, guys, you guys don't understand. I've been fighting within the Democratic Party for reform for decades. And I'm like, doesn't that prove our point? You've been fighting in the Democratic Party for decades, and look where it's at. So maybe, just maybe, change strategies. They don't even realize that they...
Just a taste. Let's just see how it goes. What's the was like, well, Trump will win. And I was like, with all due respect, let's use this hypothetical 2016. Let's play out 2016. Trump won anyway. So in retrospect, just do the mind game with me. Just do the thought experiment. You know Trump is going to win in 2016 anyway. Would you have advised Bernie to do something different at the end of his campaign when he was so obviously and openly at that point being screwed by the DNC? You know, can you play out for us how that would have gone? And, you know, I think it's interesting that there is like a real reluctance to even open one's mind to that possibility. Because I'm open to counter arguments. If you tell me that your expertise can prove to me, you can rely on your expertise to prove to me some real concrete reason why these alternative strategies won't work, I'm open to hear it. I'm not, dogmatic about these things. But the fact that I'm so open and no one's been really able to prove the case after I've been doing almost 2 years of these interviews now has got me a lot more confident in my political position than I was at the end of the Bernie campaign, let's say.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, well said. Unless you have anything else you want to ask, CJ, I won't get back to the subject.
I can always add more, but I just told myself I'm not. So
just because,
go ahead
remember,
so we can get to the next topic. Because I think we're going to circle back to that, because I do have a clip from that interview you just did that I want to play. It's the section where you're talking about Nina Turner, because I do have questions about that. So just about the strategy.
So we can do that. I almost done.
We'll come back to that.
Also brought up something important, because I do want to cover this part, because I do want to cover the update of that, is this tentative agreement. And I want to get Bree's thought on this as well. Biden, who I think may be celebrating a bit prematurely here, because the deal, once again, come from my perspective of Marxist Leninist, is garbage. Where you just say, oh, we give you 1 day where you can fix yourself up, patch yourself up. 1 day, we're not going to pay you. That's our deal we're going to give you. Labor, we have them by the balls. See, this is why they don't like me. I'm too rough around the edges. But we have them exactly what we want them. Think about the theory of change we have, CJ. We want the capitalists to be begging us to negotiate. Yes. This is not the time for you to go small. So I don't want to read too much. I want to show you guys Biden. I was going to share his speech, but for the sake of time, I'm not. So I'm going to cut that part. But pretty much he get his speech where he's like, oh my God, this is great for America. This is great for progress. This is his tweet. Thanks for your concern, Wall Street Journal. To answer your question, yes, the trains are running on time. Nothing better than a nice fashion joke, right? I'm going to show you guys some members reacting, because I was digging around. I wanted to see what the workers say, right? So this is citizen journalism. So they're just individual anecdotal perspectives, but that's what citizen journalists do. We listen to the workers, and then we make our own perspective from there. We don't listen to the bourgeoisie. So this is what some workers were saying. And then I'll pass it to you, Bree, if you want to chime in on this whack-ass deal. That please do not take this, for the love of God, workers. Do not take it, please. But anyway, this is a tweet. About 6,000 likes. A lot of people seen it. If you want a taste on how row members are reacting to the news of this deal, here's the BMWE Facebook comment section. Why is our union posting this like it's some kind of game-changing deal? Day one day is laughable. They talking about only the 1 day medical leave day, unpaid. The paying members didn't agree to this, and better pay was demanded also. No, and no. We wanted paid sick leave days, not unpaid. Now we still have to come to work sick because we need a paycheck. So they got unpaid days off. They're going to vote this down. So they're just citizen journalism. Showing you guys just some anecdotal responses to this, which makes me feel optimistic, because I swear to God, everyone better feel like this.
So, you just got to ask yourself, who's saying this is a great deal? And is that a great source for anything economics? That's what I would say. Who's saying this is a great deal? And I would say corporate media, the White House. They're coming out touting this. That to me is suspicious. That tells me, without even reading it, and I have, but if I don't even have to read it, I'm like, I'm a little suspicious on that. I mean, that's like coming out with MAGA communism. I'm just like, I don't know about, I don't know about that one there. So go ahead, Nick.
Bree,
yeah,
Go ahead.
When I woke up this morning, I was like, oh shit, because I did a whole radar about this. And then the first news I saw on Twitter when I picked up my phone in the morning was that an agreement had been reached. was like, God, I got to rework this. Because I was like tearing into them because we're, not listening to workers and everything. So, and then I saw it was a tentative agreement, so I reframed and it still worked. But it was interesting because over the course of the day, Jonah Furman and others, were tweeting like, don't characterize this as a win. There's an obvious investment that the, establishment has in helping you to think that the crisis is over. And it's the fear of the shutdown that gave them the bargaining power, and the news headlines that suggest that everybody can go back to work and there's nothing to see here disempower labor. So, I do think that's a really important point. And I think Jonah and some others tweeting some other tweets from workers that are very unhappy with this compromise. And like we were saying earlier, the fact that Biden was made to come to the table. Remember the posture of this. Just yesterday, Warren Buffett's wrote that letter to the White House urging them to vote on a proposition that would basically force them to accept the terms that the kind of Biden panel of mediators had come up with that did not include sick leave. And but for Bernie voting it down and saying he was not going to vote for it, they might have been forced into that compromise last night. And instead, they were up bargaining at midnight, ruining my morning by making me have to pitch it really hard. So that they and come to at least a tentative agreement, right? So like this stuff matters. The quality of president and their genuine commitment to labor. I think Biden, maybe he's better than most. I don't know, but he's no Bernie, because we know what would have happened if literally Bernie wasn't standing there.
I was just about to say we could not have I'm very critical of Jim Crow Joe. I'll personally about to say we couldn't have a worse guy right now in charge, because he's gonna do a lot of fake head moves that will support labor in the same way that he tricked a lot of people. And like Chris Small is going to the White House, which I think is a misstep. I think that only get Biden a victory that he doesn't deserve, especially considering this, right? This is why I say I think obviously, like, I'm not here making the argument that Republicans are better. I think both the two-party duopoly are trash. So you can say any member of the two-party duopoly right now is going to be good, right? Whether you got neoliberal Democrats, Republicans, Biden's anti-labor. That's why he came out here in celebration of this deal, which is trash. I was about to show you guys that video. To me, I see that video. I see it as an unhinged video, because it's still saying that this deal is going to save it. This is great for the workers. This is great for the American people. That's an unhinged.
It's premature.
Ronald Reagan. Yeah, go ahead, Bree.
It's premature, and it's a plan. It's to make everybody stop paying attention, because even Joe Biden, what happened right now wasn't Joe Biden being a good guy we open talking about this. He wasn't just animated randomly. No, the circumstances that were created by the greed of these corporations and the hard work and perseverance of the workers, the gap between those two was so stark and so appalling that the whole country was galvanized into paying attention to this, even though all the news coverage, as you guys played earlier, went out of its way to not articulate what it was that the demand actually was and how minimal it actually was. And frankly, even when I was researching my radar and I was reading article after article, trying to get the details of the thing, it was almost impossible just to get a straight description of what the vacation policies were. Yeah. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
I read half a dozen articles in the leading papers in the nation, long articles, and maybe you'll get something like many paragraphs down that finally allude to the nature of what like how many vacation days do they get? Complaining about vacation days, and without people like Max Alvarez at the Real News doing the coverage and like talking to actual workers, I still wouldn't know. So even with all of that background and even with that uphill battle, that's what made Biden have to come to the table. And frankly, the best articulation I've heard of what the stakes were, and again, I have my criticisms of Bernie Sanders, but his Senate Twitter account put out a 3-minute video of him talking on the House floor where he walks through how minimal the demands are, what the kind of vacation demands our counterparts in Europe get. And our workers, as I said in my radar this morning, are just as worthwhile of these kind of basic protections as some random laborer in Norway. And also at the end, like walks through in detail how much money these corporations have earned in profit over the course of this pandemic. And one statistic showed that I think these corporations turn a 50% profit per laborer. like they 50%, like full 50% profit per labor. So I mean, this is the world we live in. This isn't, you can't have these excuses about how you can't afford it or the business is going to go out of business if you pay your employers anymore. This was just like an ideal situation to highlight corporate greed. And there's a strong argument that not all of the blood that can be squeezed in this stone has been squeezed out, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and that's why I hope workers realize, and I'm going to at least continue to educate the people in my radius of this, right? This was started by the capitalist class. If you look at the profits, when you maximize your market value, which they do because they get national contracts, they maximize how much they can make. At that point, capital makes money by exploiting what? Labor value. That's why old workers say they used to have a ton of time off. That's why I include, like, when you talk about paid medical time off versus paid, that's a money issue because that has value. So they got to extract that from the worker because they don't want to hire more work. It's all class warfare that they wage first. And even if you take this deal, they will continue to wage. That's what I emphasize. I want Americans to be have more discipline when they realize that. There's a reason, and not random, that the quality of life for road workers dropped. And you can look at Democracy Now! Either one, their guest explained it really well. The quality of life dropped from road workers, where you have parents that used to tell their kids, this is the life hack. Being a road worker is a life hack. You get a ton of time off, you get a ton of family time off, and you get paid well. It went from that, now they're like, bro, they had a 20% labor reduction, which is unheard of in that industry just a few decades ago. And that is because of the class strike that had been going on for years. Labor just now caught up. So that's my final thoughts on that segment. Do you guys have anything? CJ, I'll let you take over if you want to do the next segment. Just for a second time, I think we did good because this story is not over. They're going to continue because it's just a tentative deal. We're going to continue to follow it, and the strikes that this will encourage later on, because strikes is infectious. This is why the ruling class try to stop it before it becomes national headlines. Because now workers somewhere else, they're like, hey, they striking. Why don't we start asking questions? Right. That last thing I'm gonna say. CJ, anything else? And I'll let you take over if you have a segment or any questions you want to ask.
I do.
You go ahead.
I do. I know we have the student segment, and also, but I do want to.
Do you have 30 minutes? How much time?
I'm sorry.
Do you have 30 minutes? How much time we have? 30 minutes.
Sure.
Right, so
you put her on the spot.
we got JB and Savvy. We can do your segment last, and then we can get close to wrapping up. That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think we may be able to wrap it all together because a lot of these conversations can always have sort of a part of it where we're talking about the Democratic Party and the progressive part of that Democratic Party. So let's talk about dark money and what has recently happened with the Democratic Party and them refusing to ban dark money in those primaries. And I've seen you kind of go on a sort of a tour, and you've said this over several months. You've been trying to narrow down what's the best strategy for going forward, and who trying to get it narrowed down to sort of deliver it to your audience. But then we have this, which to me it makes the strategy of progressive Democrats, of Justice Democrats, it's flawed in many areas, but in this particular part, it's sort of, for me, like a now what? It's like now they've basically thrown down the gauntlet, because the only people that this is going to affect, dark money, is progressives. This is what this is specifically targeted to, because it's not any GOP, it's not any, Republicans. This is to target progressives, like what happened with Nina Turner. So it always comes back to me, and this was the first question that came to me, Bree, when the news about dark money in the Democratic committee, whatever the committee is called. It's, what does it take for progressives to wake up? Like, what does it take for progressives to say, like, you are a progressive, you believe in A, B, and C. which the Democrats does not believe in any. But how many things do the Democratic Party have to keep adding on to the layers of corruption, the layers of just bad decisions, the layers of non-working class sort of policies? How much of that needs to be layered on before you say, where's the red line, is the question I have. So could you sort of speak to that? Could you speak to that that point? Any surrounding sort of topics you want to add in there? I want to keep it broad for you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so again, like I know people, it can be frustrating for me sometimes because I see comments like, oh, I'm glad Briahna's coming around on this, or well, Briahna's so close, but she doesn't quite get it. Like, guys, like I got it. I've been on it, but I have a responsibility to an audience. And if people want to go and have already made up their mind and hear people who already agree with them about Dem exit, there's obviously spaces for that. But I see my role in the fact that there are some folks that invest with a certain degree of credibility for various reasons, not all of which are earned, but which are there, to help people come to the process through the same way that I came to the process without just having been telling them, you must just believe me that the Democratic Party is over. Well, how did I come to this conclusion? I came through it experientially. So let me expose them to the same kind of experiences that I had. Besides which, I'm relatively new to politics. I never want to seem so, hubristic to think that I know all the answers to everything, especially when I'm talking to people who've been in this for so much longer than I have and have so much more knowledge than I do. So in these interviews, my goal has been to ask the questions that I think any reasonable person would ask about why working in the Democratic Party would yield any different results. What changes can be made? Let's be honest about the barriers and the obstacles that are in the way. And then do you have an argument about how to get around them? Do you have an argument that justifies not doing a different strategy? And I've talked to labor organizers who've, I think, done a lot of blustering and a lot of, look, obviously organizing is so important, but you simultaneously don't want to talk about a general strike. And also you just pivot to organize. Every time I ask you a specific question about, well, what should we do to capitalize on the Black Lives Matter protests? What should we do to capitalize on the fact that there are people who are, I'm so sorry. That is my mother.
No worries.
To capitalize on the fact that there are so many, there was an electoral demand, like there was an electoral lever that existed in 2020. And if they're so desperate to win, what can we extract? What can we do to capitalize on midterms? And so often I have one camp of people who are organizers who say, we don't have the union density to really ask for much. All we got to do is organize. We can't take advantage of COVID. We can't take advantage of the lockdowns. We can't take advantage of people feeling like they really need healthcare. Let's just punt this for later. And on the other side, there are some there's some people who are so, I think, disenchanted with electoralism that they don't even want to use it as like a political strategy. So I would talk to, let's say, people who I obviously adore and respect a great deal, like Chris Hedges, and say, okay, well, do you think we should just sit out and pay no attention to elections then? That's a valid answer. And he said, no, I don't. And so when I say, okay, well, what then should we do? Like, how can we use this as a point of leverage? I don't get necessarily the specifics that I want to hear. I'm hearing that electoralism is useless, but also we shouldn't set elections. So let's talk strategically. But sometimes I find when I talk strategically about what to do, how to exploit election cycles to get real concessions for the left, I'm accused of like caring too much about electoral politics or thinking electoral politics are going to save us. Well, no. Even Chris Hedges said we shouldn't sit it out. Sean Massawan said we shouldn't sit it out. So what do we do? And so when pressing people on the specifics, what I've discovered is when I talk to candidates, those are real kind of revealing moments, because candidates are often like, they're great people. They really mean well. They share our interests. But there's been a few that have come through the show. One dropped out of a race after talking to me on the show and to the people on call-in because she was having a hard time kind of justifying participating and giving so much of herself and her personal money, which she didn't have a lot of, to this situation where the party was aligned against her, where she was getting knocked by the Democrats.
Yes.
But when I talk to people like that have been beat up the most, when I talk to India Walton, for instance, who has had a better front row seat to how vile the Democratic Party is to its own candidates than her? She won her primary within the Democratic Party to be the mayor of Buffalo. She won fair and square. And that same establishment machine that normally says, oh, well, we're going to just support the Democratic nominee, ultimately didn't really come to her defense in a robust way when her opponent beat her in a write-in campaign. A write-in campaign still managed to knock her out. And so when I talk to these people, what I'm expecting, people like her with people like Zogby, what I'm expecting is to hear from them triple the amount of outrage as a regular person, because they were personally affected by this. And when I see that they don't seem to be as angry as we are, or at least they don't seem to be as willing to call out the people who allied against them within the party as we are, what it feels like is that they're making a decision. And this is not, personal. I adore India, I adore all of these people, but what it feels like as a voter, as an organizer, as an outsider, as a worker, is that they're choosing to still protect the Democratic Party establishment rather than to give voice to the obvious thing that we can all see, which is that the Democratic Party stabbed them in the back. And they think they can occupy this neutral position of, yes, oh, well,
not anymore.
It just doesn't gel for people. And I try to explain it to them because I want them to see that people could still have confidence in their ability to actually do adversarial politics and be useful, even participating in electoralism. Ralph Nader was useful. Outsider third-party campaigns are useful. But there is this perception, and you heard this in the Zogby interview, that if you want to do anything other than running within the Democratic Party, you're giving up. You're not fighting. And there's this characterization of it as an action, which I think is really disrespectful to the people who are in fact very active. They just see that doing the same old thing over and over again within the Democratic Party is doomed to fail. And that is the most inactive, stagnant thing you can do.
That's why I'm glad he pushed back, because that's the point in the interview I saw and I thought it was a highlight. Because they always assume, and I get this all the time, and this is the people who claim that we're nihilists. And this one thing what you're doing is very valuable. I don't know why people don't understand it. To me, it's very clear. I definitely understand what you're trying to do. Because what you did a good job formulating our arguments to them in a way they never hear before. Because a lot of them, I have noticed, pretend they don't understand our strategy. And these same people, I'm not going to say names, but Schroeder and Do Your Interview comes up to mind, where they say, oh, these people don't got a plan. They're nihilists. If you're not supporting Democrats, then what? I'm like, how many times have we laid out our theory of change? I've been very clear, and I think, and I got evidence to back this up, I think a large constituents of the working class that give validity to this two-party duopoly hurts our movement. I think I heard you kind of illustrate this in your interviews as well, and they don't even understand this point. Because by you giving legitimacy to their system, you strip our worker leverage away. Because what I want a third party where we can get at least 15 to 20%. Because scientific socialism has taught us, and revolutions has taught us, revolution is not waged by 70% of the population. You need 15 to 20%. And then you got
only 3%.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that say even less. I will argue personally, especially right now, I probably personally put at 15. I think we need 50%. But I think we get like 15%, probably even less than that. Then you defeat the 30% who won't move. Then the rest are people who just want to live life. They see stuff get shut down. Then they're like, man, come on, just give them healthcare already. All right, I'm joining their side because they're just. And that's the third party movement trying to do. You get 5%, you get federal funding. You get 15%, you get on the debate stage. They never bring this up. So I get frustrated, and I'm glad you bring this stuff up to them, because I never hear them even have to address these basic points. They don't even seem to understand. That's my rant. CJ Bree, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, I actually have something for Bree. It's along the lines of the point that she was making. It's a clip from the interview you did with Kashama, and I'm gonna have Kashama in a joint interview with Kashama and Dr. Jill Stein soon. So I'll announce that soon. But this. Well, let me play the video or the clip, and then I'll ask the question at the end.
There absolutely should be a progressive challenger from the left in a militant campaign. I absolutely don't think it should be from the Democratic Party. And I do want to address the specific names that you brought up. But before doing that, I want to say it's much more about the strategy, the political strategy that we as working people use to bring a real challenge to the Democratic and Republican candidates. And the starting point, the ABCs of that strategy are you don't run as a Democrat. Because look at what they did to Bernie Sanders. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry of progressive Democrats supported Bernie in 2020. They were, when I went to the Tacoma Dome to speak at Bernie's rally, they were all there with me. I know these people. They don't support Bernie's politics, but they were there because it was so easy. There was nothing at stake to get on the Bernie bandwagon at that time, and yet then go ahead and support Biden once Bernie was crushed, because we all knew that was going to happen. The Democratic Party elite were going to use some trick or another to get Bernie off the books. And then you got James Clyburn, you got South Carolina, and lo and behold, it happened. We didn't know exactly how it would happen, but we knew it would happen. So the first obligation we have as people on the left, if we are serious organizers, if we have any loyalty to the working class, is to first be crystal clear about that. Whether it makes you popular or not, be crystal clear. The Democratic Party is not the way to go. And I don't want to hear, these things that people come up with on the left where they'll say, well, it's the ballot line, it's a technicality. No, this is no technicality. This is, if you don't run as an independent, you are not taking on the fight that needs to be taken on, which is to present an independent fight back. And if you don't, Bernie was the strongest expression so far of the burning desires that working people have. And I have a lot of appreciation for Bernie, but look what happened. It went nowhere.
And that's the point, or what I want to ask, or to set up the question is, it's like the strategy has been proven not to work. This progressive, this building out this Democratic Party, this dark money has come in to solidify that the Democratic Party doesn't want you. You see what happened to Nina Turner. I don't understand. What I don't understand from the professional managerial class who have these degrees is, how are you this intelligent, but you can't see that you're trying to squeeze a square peg in a round hole? That's not working. And they keep adding, now they're changing a hole from a square or a circle to a hexagon. It's like they're making it even worse. So it's like, it begins to get to a point, Bree, where it's now, for me, it's like now I'm beginning to get to the point where it almost feels like you're working against the working class, because you're willing to hang on to a strategy. You're willing to hang on to a strategy you know that prolongs pain and suffering. You're going to be fine, professional managerial class, but the people who are at the bottom are not. So it begins to get to me, and I think RBN, I saw Nick shake his head. It's like, now I'm starting to think you are willing to, at least, maybe you're not physically thinking or literally thinking like I'm working against them, but you're willing to at least throw them under the bus. And that's not what I'm willing to do. Can you speak to any part of that point there?
Yeah. So literally this, for all of the weird tweet storm that happened around the Chomsky interview, this was literally the central point that I was trying to get across from him. This is the question I kept asking him over and over again for an hour with no response. It was what, like a couple weeks before the election that this interview happened. I think it was episode 10 of Bad Faith. And I said to him, I am not indifferent to or ignorant of the harms that can accrue if Donald Trump is reelected. But what you have to answer, what I would like to hear you speak to, is the harms that absolutely will accrue and have been accruing for generations because we have been laboring under the status quo. And what do you have to say about all of the groups that have been harmed under the status quo? There's a lot of focus, and rightly so, about the Muslim ban and anti-LGBTQ sentiments and the anti-trans stuff and all of the kind of newer stuff that Trumpism has fomented and brought to the fore. But at any point, is there going to be a conversation about everyone who gets grandfathered in all the time, historically marginalized groups, Black people, brown people, Native Americans in this country, who we say every year, okay, yeah, I know things are really bad, but like there's this new threat, and so we just can't deal with you right now. Can you tell me, say something to me that will demonstrate that you're actually weighing the pro cons of infinite incrementalism versus taking a risk? Are you actually thinking about it and weighing the cons, or are you just so risk averse? Is this such a trolley problem that you're willing to let all of these people suffer and be grandfathered in because they just aren't your people, right? And this is what's becoming increasingly apparent. Even if there was an argument for working an inside strategy, talking to Zogby, seeing what happened to Nina Turner and India Walton, hearing. There was a window where at least progressives could get elected. Sure, fine. 2018, we had this wave, and I think a lot of us are really open to what they might be able to do. But when force the vote happens and we have this perfect storm with the narrow margins in the House and their ability to block anything, and they don't, when you see them not go to bat over the $15 minimum wage, when you see that they've really executed the strategy now that they can prevent you from getting elected in the first place by using dark money within the Democratic Party, they didn't have to say anything bad about you. They know that AIPAC got your back. They know that they can smear these candidates and get them gone without even having to lift a finger the way they back in 2018. There were all these articles about how the Democratic Party is going to blacklist vendors that help insurgent candidates, and they were doing all of this. They've streamlined their strategy. Literally all they have to do is put the dark money in the race and you're not going to win. So when it's gotten that bad, how can you even really credibly be arguing for an inside strategy when you literally can hardly get people elected anymore?
Yes, it is a terrible. I'm so happy, Bree. You are part of the revolutionary side. We need somebody in the professional managerial class that's trying to explain this to them. So let me go to this clip. Now, we've had Professor Catherine Liu on. She's a professor at UCI here in Irvine. That's not too far from me. And we discussed her book, The Case Against the Professional Managerial Class. So because it speaks to the same point that we're talking here. Let me play this part, and then we can further this conversation. That's where I'll stop it there. Our interests, PMC's interests, are not aligned with workers' interests. Can you explain what you mean by that, or can you go into more detail about that particular part?
So, even when they're progressives and they say oh, we want just social justice and we want equality, they don't really, the PMC as a class generally has a really hard time dealing with workers' interests and workers' struggles. And they don't really see themselves as workers or people who can be organized because they identify with the values of the managers and the capitalists. So it's all about extracting efficiency and labor from laborers.
So maybe I'm going to pause it there because maybe it's about extracting labor and efficiency, and doing anything outside of an institution or electoralism. It's just too much work. It's not as efficient for the PMC or for the professional managerial class. Now, I'm going to finish the clip and then allow, but I needed to insert there because there's more I got to insert at the end. And then I'll allow you to kind of speak to all of it, Bree. Hang on.
No,
like saying shut up and just go vote.
Oh yeah, that's an incredible thing. And I think all the culture war things are about that. It's all about cultural consumption, lifestyle practices. This is a lot about what my book is about, right? Because it's really hard if Americans have a hard time focusing on what it is to be a worker. It's because of this class. All of our ideological content is about empowering ourselves through consumption habits. I want to go green. I have solar panels. I do this. I do that. It's all people who are really wealthy who can make those choices, who appear progressive. But what it is to be a worker, what it is to have a working day, how that working day is governed, all of these nitty gritty issues, these are workers' issues. And what our benefits are, what our healthcare is. You guys just did that whole thing on healthcare. The single most important thing right now for the American worker, women, I don't care what, and what race you are, is Medicare for all. Why was that such a hard issue for people to wrap their heads around in 2016 and in 2020?
So I think Catherine Liu, who was great, and we're going to have her back on sometime soon, but what she's basically saying here is that the professional managerial class interests don't necessarily align with working class, and this is the reason why here at RBN we vigorously uh, call out people who keep trying to sheep herd the working class back to this party that is not there to help us. So maybe this, this pull and pull, because the reformist versus revolutionary lines are quite overlapping, and they're very parallel to the professional managerial lines too, and the working class. So they're very similar lines. And so, I am kind of ranting on, but the point of what I'm trying to get at here is it feels like we have part of the left that is saying, forget those at the very bottom, the poor and working class. Because as a side note too, a lot of times when professional managerial class talking about working class, they're talking about working class with degrees, like nurses, not the poorest working class. But it feels like,
are they talking about JB when they say that? That's
exactly. Where does he fall in? It feels like a lot of what the issue is that we have part of the left that's willing to throw the other half of the left under the bus, to sell us out with the police state, to sell us out with, funding the Iron Dome, to sell us out on just so many different levels and not fight back as a person who's supposedly fighting for the working class. So I'm getting to is this, Bree. I don't see what is in the progressive strategy that is for the working class and poor. Like, what's in it for them is just something I don't see. So could you speak to all of that? I know I kind of ranted on. Any part of that you want to talk about?
No, so it's so interesting because this came out in my interview with Dr. Zogby a little bit, right? Where he says, there was all of this focus on the people on top of the folks who are already hurting under the status quo, who will be, how much worse things can get, basically. There's a lot of focus on how much worse things can get, which kind of is a tell. It's a tell about the investment in the status quo. And even though these are not bad people, they understand that things are very bad for a lot of people, at least in like an abstract academic sense. But Absolutely. There is an unwillingness to risk things getting worse so that they could potentially get better. And that's scary, right? Like I am a relatively comfortable person, and I would never be the one to like fire the first gun in the air and say, everybody go into the streets, because that's not on me. That's not for me to say, right? I don't feel like that's my role.
Right.
However, I have spoken to enough people to observe that the people who are from a more, I don't want to say sincerely working class. I don't know how you want to distinguish the degreed working class versus not, or, the utility of even making those distinctions. But when I talk to people who call in, when I listen to, when I look at Reddit threads, when I read comment sections, when I talk to family members, what I hear is a much stronger appetite to take the risk from the people who are already suffering under the status quo than people who are not suffering under the status quo. I'm not saying it. I'm not the one building the ramparts, but it doesn't feel right to me to be saying, let's kick the can down the road and do incrementalism when I'm so comfortable, when someone who's much less comfortable than I am is actually willing to take the hit. Now, one of the most, this whole experience of like doing bad faith and having the call-in show in particular has been really revelatory for me. And I'm really not blowing smoke when I say that I learned so much from the audience and the call-in folks in particular. And it's very humbling to be in this position. And I feel a great deal of responsibility about being in this position to have the platform. And I learn a lot from folks. And one of the most humbling experiences of all of this was when last fall, I don't really know. My mother was not close to her biological father. He passed away. We went to the funeral and kind of met that side of the family in Cleveland. And I met one of my cousins who's like an adult, and he drives a truck. And he was like, "Oh, you're Briahna Gray. I listened to your podcast." I had no idea we were related. And it was, and he was talking to me about why he listened and all these other kinds of things. And all of those kinds of experiences, when he tells me, and people like him and other people in my life tell me what they're willing to do and what they're willing to fight for and what appeals to them about a left strategy, it's meaningful to me. So I don't think of myself as even really having opinions. I feel like I'm collecting facts and opinions and just kind of realities about the world and like running them through an analytical filter to come out with the conclusion that I think is kind of undeniable, which is that there are a lot of people. We are approaching a tipping point of quantity of people who are sufficiently being screwed by the betrayal of the American dream, that they are willing to take risks that they haven't been willing to take in the past. And I think the combination of Barack Obama and the promise he presented that failed, followed up by Donald Trump, which was supposed to be the worst it could possibly get. And frankly, a lot of folks didn't experience a lot of difference in their lives under Obama or Trump. And I don't mean to minimize kids in cages, and I don't mean to minimize, the real things that he did, the environmental harms that we weren't even really going to experience until down the pike. Like, I don't mean to minimize that. But for the average human being just working for the last 8 years, there was a lot of kicking and screaming and telling people this is the worst that was ever going to get. And that's why we needed to vote for Biden. That's why we needed to vote for Hillary. And having experienced that, it's a little bit of a boy who cried wolf situation. And people are willing to say, screw it. Okay, Dr. Zogby, you're telling me that if we try this alternative strategy, I might end up with another Trump. Well, we survived that. Obviously, I know some people didn't. COVID, I understand those arguments, and I don't want me to be disrespectful of them. I'm just articulating what I hear. And people are saying, I survived it and I'm willing to take the chance.
That's such a good point. And I want to speak a little more, and I'll pass to CJ. And then we get a super chat. Remember, we got 30 minutes. We got JB and Savvy. So make sure you stay tuned. We got a lot of content going on today. One thing I want to add, because there's such a great point that you mentioned. I notice people, and they tend to be privileged. They tend to ease caution. They follow the CI tactics list. That's like number 4. These people are always ease caution at every event. Forced to vote is like the main thing that comes to my mind. But people are like, oh my God, we can't do this. All these people with healthcare, by the way.
And no risk. First of all, I just really want to be clear about this. There are risks sometimes that we just have calculated risks, right? If we crash, if we hold up the fight for 15 and we don't get COVID vaccines out as a consequence, there could be some downsides, like realistically. But force the vote, 0 downsides. The only downside is that Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. That there's like no Speaker of the House for a few weeks while they sort it out. Like it's like it was all over war. And this is the thing. People are like, well, you can't prove it would have upsides. The less you can prove there are downsides, the less I need to be able to prove that there are upsides. Let's just throw it out the wall and see if it sticks. If there are no negative consequences, right? And it's the same thing with this third party versus inside game argument. The less you're able to prove that an inside strategy works, the less I have to prove that the outside strategy works.
Right. That's such a great point. Now, my final video I want to bring up is of Nick, and it speaks to the same sort of thing. And this articulates it. Let's listen.
There's a class divide on the left right now where you have privileged motherfuckers with health care who get mad at poor and disenfranchised people for not liking the politicians that they like. So why is this accepted on the left? People wonder why I'm going off on the Western left. This is why. There is no solidarity in this movement. So these privileged people, they see people get left behind. So if you don't support Medicare for all, how many people are going to die because of that? If you are not canceling student loan debt, how many people are living in poverty because of your decision? But meanwhile, privileged people, and I've seen their houses. It's not fair that I've seen it, but I've seen it. These people we talking about, they make a lot of money. The people make a lot of money, and then they get mad at protesters for challenging their favorite politicians. And yes, I am mad because I see people going along with it. I thought we were supposed to have class analysis, but apparently we don't. So when I get mad at the squad for funding the police more, how are you going to get mad at me for criticizing your favorite politicians when they are funding the forces of oppression that are killing us? You know why? Because you're a white privileged motherfucker who's staying at home knowing that you're not going to be a victim of police violence. So since you know you're not going to be a victim of police violence, you get mad at people who are calling out your favorite politicians for being complicit with it. No, we are not allies. No, we are not friends unless you stand in our community. And I'm calling all these people out because I am tired of people putting the preference and the opinions and the emotional health of the politicians over the activists.
Amen. Amen, Nick. Amen.
Where I come from, so I'm gonna get to the question. But where I come from, we shouldn't even give them a fucking excuse like, oh, Rome, technically Rome wasn't the one who did. I don't care. My response to that was, are you telling me that working class people should not challenge your favorite politicians? You made the argument why we shouldn't be mad at Bernie. You made the argument why we should be mad at AOC. Instead of be like, oh my God, these activists, they're so toxic because they mad at your favorite politician. Fuck you.
I had to play all the way to the end of the part there.
I gotta say this. If you guys don't know why I'm so heated, just to give you guys some context, that was after the March for America for All. And remember the march that Rome, our RBN brother, organized? I remember in Twitter there was a bunch of AOC sycophants. We all know they are. They was mad. They was like, look at this March for America for All that they ran. They red brown lines. They was booing AOC. And people made a big deal over it. And I was like, so? Even if they was booing up, so? Why are you guys protecting the politician over the activist? That's why I was heated. Just so you guys know, because they was upset with my brother.
No, I played it because I feel like reformists and some people in the professional managerial class, like you said, academically, they understand people are suffering, but they need to see and hear. And in that clip, you can see and hear the frustration in Nick's voice. With like, you really like we're giving voice to really people who are dying at the hands of the police state. I personally know people shot by the police and killed, and you're mad because you like the politician who works for us and who has a nice pension, who has health care. Like, is this even a serious thing? So could you sort of speak to that? Because you were sort of wrapped up in all of this forced to vote back and forth kind of thing too. So could you speak to that, please?
Yeah, look, I feel very strongly that it is not my place, and it definitely isn't a politician's place to try to tone police like the righteous anger of people who are being very affected by our deeply unequal society. I, am frustrated sometimes when people look. No one's perfect, and there's a critique for everybody. But yeah. I really think people misunderstand why it's necessary to have folks that have different kinds of tones across the left. I really appreciate why people want to listen to RBN and hear Nick go off and that kind of righteous.
You're a lot of people away.
I appreciate why so many people are attracted to Jimmy Dore, who seems to be talking about the crises with a level of energy that is actually correlated with how serious things are. People don't want to, some folks want to hear a dispassionate conversation because they see there's credibility in that. I'm happy to provide that for people who want that. But I also very much respect the need for people to have other kinds of outlets and other kinds of sources. And, I do think that it can become an academic exercise for folks. I see myself as being in a privileged position, but I'm also kind of a first generation of a person in that privileged position. And, I hear my mother talking about how frustrating it is. My family is very young because my grandmother had my mom when she was 17. And so my grandmother's a relatively young woman. And my mom had me when she was like 24. So like we're all kind of deep, closest stacked. And so my great grandmother's not that old. Her, she died when I was in my early 20s. And my mom, I remember having these conversations about how little her house was worth in Cleveland, how my great grandfather was a bricklayer who worked so hard. They had migrated up from South Carolina. They had this really tough life, and how proud they were to have bought that house. And how my mom spent all of her childhood memories in that house. And I went to that house, and that house is still in the family. Now there's like 3 generations of people living in that house that is worth something like $15,000 because it's in this terrible neighborhood in Cleveland. And that's what happens to our communities. And that's the consequence of redlining, and the generational wealth that was going to accrue to other kinds of communities didn't benefit Black people in those same kinds of ways. And my relatives who fought in Vietnam and other wars didn't get the same benefits in terms of GI bills and those these things feel very real. It's not just like I read a book about redlining, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I do feel that combination of proximity in terms of my personal life and also the clarity that comes with the advantages that I have. Having had a glimpse of the privilege because of my education and my professional life, I know shockingly well what the haves have and the have-nots don't, and how unfair that system is and how rigged it is. And when people are talking about, oh, well, like not everyone can go to college. Yeah, sure. I want people who don't go to college to be fairly compensated and have a good quality of life as well. But I also know that everybody who says that is going to send their kids to college because they know all of the doors that start to open in the life that they can access in the unequal world we live in right now today. And so I think the combination of those things makes me kind of, I don't know. I have I think more humble deference for what I don't know, because I'm less knowledgeable and I'm still very much learning about the strategies that can be deployed. I learn a lot from the union organizers, even if I'm frustrated that sometimes they don't have the same energy that I would like to see them have. I learn a lot from the politicians and people like Zogby about what the obstacles are in our way. And I'm grateful for him to talk about what we have to overcome. I learn a lot from all of these people, and I'm genuinely grateful for them that they are willing to come and talk to me. At the same time, that I think I have a little bit more, I don't know, I'm grateful for being grounded by these other aspects of my personal biography that make it feel very real to me. I guess we're talking about inside outside games, and to the extent that I feel kind of I've been historically kind of open to both and interested in palpating the possibilities of both, it's because I've lived a little bit of an inside outside life. But the evidence has mounted, and it's increasingly difficult for me to understand the justifications of banging one's head against the wall and doing the same thing that we've been doing for a long time now within the Democratic Party, when it has refined its ability to keep progressives out,
right,
the way it has done now.
Very well said. And just for the second time, this has been a great conversation. And I know you're very busy, Bree, so I appreciate you staying with me. We got super chats. We got a few super chats I want to get through. And we definitely got to wrap, because I know Sabby and JB going to start. So I'm going to try to get through these super chats pretty quickly. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for the 20 bucks, Katie, Nick. Bree, if you want to respond to any of these, feel free. But I'm going to try and get through these, just because I appreciate your time.
And let me warn you. We read all super chats.
It's okay.
So we don't have any idea if anybody said anything crazy. So we're gonna see in a second.
I'm a big girl.
Thank you for 20 bucks. Today's bad faith guest had my blood boiling. I was watching it. I was like,
when I was watching it, I was mad. Yeah.
I wouldn't say my blood was boiling, but it was I definitely disagreed. I'm gonna just say that. And that's why I said I think you did a good job presenting the counter argument. And that was
Jamie Harris was a good person. He said Jamie Harris was a good person. That's when I was like, what the?
Oh, Jesus.
And Bree, in her nice professional way, was like, yeah, I get that he's better than Wasserman. That was her way of saying, you out your fucking mind. That guy's terrible. He's a lobbyist. But go ahead, Nick. He's a lobbyist.
Yeah, I will be calling in today on debrief. Yeah, debrief is fun. I was on.
See you tonight at 7:30, KD.
I'm gonna join too. Then
yeah, that's fun. It's a fun show. Bree does a good job on there. It's very fun. Thank you for $5, Simon. Briahna is a saint. Happy to see her back on RBN. Thank you for the positive super chat there, Simon. Thank you for the $5, Egg64. As a former worker in the real ways, you can count on your first 3 to 5 years to be 100% on call, plus the hours of your regular schedule. And that was what I was thinking when I was reading about the way. And a lot of these road workers are well compensated, but at what point do you become a wage slave? What we mean by that is just your life is just to serve your boss. Yeah, even if you make a lot of money, what does that matter if you can't take vacations and shit? You got all this money.
Also, I'm sorry. The logic is completely backward. The point is that these companies are extremely profitable and sending out millions of dollars in dividends to shareholders. If the laborers are making all of that profit, I don't care if they're already well compensated. They can be better compensated.
Right.
Why is the rule that all of their excess profits go to shareholders that did absolutely nothing to generate that profit? It's such an ass-backward system. Like, as long as it's subsistence wages, as long as they are earning a little bit over what other people who do get vacation days earn, then we shouldn't care about the cut they're getting. The point is that if we had an equitable system, if we had more worker-owned enterprises, then obviously they'd be dispersing those things either back into the company and investing in the company or back to themselves in the form of wages because they earned it.
Well said, Bree.
Makes sense to me, but
as always, thanks for the $2, Jason. If you don't hit the like, you're a class traitor. Well said. In fact, facts. There's nothing but facts.
I love our community. Yes.
And I will raise that. I will say you're a class traitor if you don't watch JB and Savvy show. All right, maybe I'm overreaching, but thank you for that. That's a funny comment. Thank you for 999. Bree plus RBN team. Can we get a segment discussing how Bernie early ducking of a 2024 primary is a bull? Can Bernie for former press secretary get him on for an interview? We should call him. If Bernie doesn't want to talk to Kyle Kulinski, guys, he's not talking to us. Let me just say that. Feel free to add anything you want.
Which is fine.
Yeah, I would love to interview Bernie. I haven't asked in a while. I mean, I obviously know the comms director and have asked him. I mean, it's been a while. I got tired of asking and being told no. But I'm not overly optimistic about the chance.
I wouldn't bet on it. Yeah.
Jesus. Thank you for 199. What are Brown Joy Graves' thoughts on MAGA communism? Let me just say this, guys.
What, I saw it trending, and I saw that you guys did a thing with Jackson Hinkle about it, but I'm not entirely sure what it means.
Yeah, so let me just say this. If you guys think MAGA communism is a thing, I suggest I got an idea for you guys. Go to a Trump rally. You know that I still got a communist flag here. Take the communist flag and fly to the Trump rally and see how well that goes. If you guys think communism is a thing, and I'll talk about with Jackson. Most probably Jackson, we disagreed that that's a thing. If you I haven't heard an answer because I asked them what's the difference between thinking they're good Republicans and supporting the Justice Democrats. There's no difference, guys. I'm sorry, and I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it in response to that. But go ahead.
And you can check out Ben Norton was on Danny Haifang's show, like right when we were on. I was watching it also, and they talked about it and they went through all the stuff. So I would check out that stream on the Left Lens, and it was Ben Norton was a guest earlier today. But I'm not sure if MAGA communism is the same thing as socialist patriotism. It sounds similar, but I'm not sure it's the same thing. But obviously, MAGA is a slogan, is not it doesn't come from the working class. Actually, it came from pretty like people with a lot of money. Yeah, like make America great again. Yes. And also communism is about not having a state. How are you going to say make America great again and then be about communism? It just doesn't make any sense. It's something that's being made up.
I saw your question.
Look, I did an episode about this with Gerald Horn probably last fall, asking him whether or not it was useful at all as a rhetorical device. I think because Jackson was having similar conversations back then about the utility of using kind of patriotism as a rhetorical device for the left to reclaim it, whether or not the left should have the same kind of open antipathy for things like flag wearing and such, if it wants to actually broaden its borders, knowing how, Americans can be, and whether or not it's possible to do a kind of pride in country and redefine what we're exactly proud of. Can we be proud of the things that happen within our nation without being proud of the borders itself, without being jingoistic, without, all of the negative things that a lot of people on the left associate with patriotism? And there was some resistance in that conversation, but it was an interesting thought experiment. People want to go back and listen to that.
Yeah, well said. I'm gonna just move on just because time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for 199. Salgado, Bree, we reject Sirota. It's all good. We also reject cancel culture. I'm gonna say.
So let me say this.
Yeah.
Let me say this. Like David Sirota, and I would say Jordan Sheridan comes into this too. And Jordan Sheridan, we've sort of squashed our thing with him, and we follow each other now, and like everything's cool. But it's not anything to do with their professional life. Like David Sirota does good reporting. Jordan Sheridan does good reporting. It's when you try to funnel people to the Democratic Party, that's when RBN is going to come in and say, "Oh, wait. Let's make sure. Let's examine this." Go ahead, Bree.
Well, I mean, anybody who's listened to Bad Faith has heard me go back and forth with Sirota on all the things.
Yeah.
And I say that it's difficult because I know nobody wants to hear, oh, you have a personal relationship. Well, I don't give a fuck. You shouldn't care. Like, you should feel willing. You can say whatever you want about anybody, and that's well within your right. And
Yeah, that's completely
real.
fine.
I do value his reporting an awful lot. I wouldn't know any of the details that I came to understand about how legislative process works. Those details that I use to write articles about Force the Vote and defend Force the Vote and advocate for Force the Vote, I wouldn't know it without David Sirota and even Ryan Grimm and David Dayen. Like, I rely on them in their reporting. I think the whole left relies on them in their reporting a great deal. And so I really want to respect that because they work really hard. And without the content generated by them, all of our shows, I mean, what would we even talk about? We just had a Lover article on the screen a few minutes ago. So, and also, like, you guys all know that it's tough out here on the internet streets, and I'm not going to pile on to that particular one.
Yeah.
I really respect everybody.
It's tough out here on the streets. It's tough out here on the streets.
I always add, and I think you guys know in my commentary, I always say I do it without the intention of canceling people. I don't believe in that. So I don't get mad if you like we did a segment criticizing Breaking Point. So some dude like, oh, so I can't watch Breaking Point. And I'm like, did I say that?
No, not absolutely.
You guys, this is
well,
where
it is my strategy.
So
it is my strategy, and people may have picked this apart when they notice I go from Marianne Williamson, then I go to I do have a strategy, and that strategy is I want the voices that are telling the working class to go to the Democrats. That I need to discredit that part of what they're saying, and that's my attack point, and I'm open about that. So that's where I'm going to continue to go. But go ahead, Nick, with the next one.
Yeah, we only got 2 more chats. Thank you. With our eyes rise, with how many state ballots on the African Socialist Party on, with a good amount of exposure, we see enough Black community support for it. I'm actually going to visit them in St. Louis maybe next week.
Yeah, they asked us to come out there.
So look forward to that content. I'm going to explain to you guys how they do mutual aid down there. For anything I've heard so far, it's been extremely impressive. So
just so you know, we're going out there so they can help us learn how to do these things that we want to do in the community. We're going to be launching with our so we're going out there for research for them to help us and train us to do this.
Yeah. And once again, stay tuned for that. But thanks for the $10. We only got 2 more comments here. The Woke Report: the people who died of COVID or crippled by long COVID don't get a choice in being affected when anti-maskers refuse to do mitigation. Black workers are most devastated. Thanks for the $10. The Woke Report. Thanks for the $10. Ike, what's Briahna's show called? Someone in the comments said, you talking about Debrief? Something about class trader alike, and I felt it in my bone. Hence, I love you guys. Black left libertarian here, aka socialist anarchist. Very interesting. So I think you're talking about the Debrief I'm calling, right? So with that said, I think that's a good opportunity. Bree, last word. Because Sabby and JB starting literally 10 minutes. That's the only reason I'm getting to it here. Bree, last thoughts. I appreciate you sticking in there with us.
Yeah, no, look, it's my pleasure. I really I hope to get you and Sabby on Bad Faith soon. So that's my main podcast. It comes out twice a week, 3 Thursday episodes, and we release a long clip on Bad Faith YouTube of the premium Monday episodes. Even if you aren't subscribing, that's no worries there. And also after the Bad Faith podcast air on Mondays and Thursdays, I host a debrief, which is on the Call-In app. So people call in and ask questions, and we have really, really great community over there. Good. That's usually around 7:30 or 8 the day that Bad Faith drops. So Monday and Thursdays. And also you can catch me Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays over at the Hill Rising, co-hosting with Robbie Suave.
Yes.
We're killing the game. CJ, any last things you want to say before we wrap up?
Great to have great to have you on, Bree. Hopefully we can make this a little more frequent, because it is very valuable for us as revolutionists to talk to somebody who can give voice to at least the understanding of the professional managerial class and reformists, because you're able to travel between both. Because we just spew things on this side. Well, now we're getting a little bit of understanding, at least their point of view.
We're all just spewing things. And I really am. I'm not blowing smoke. Like I'm genuinely so glad that you guys are here. I listen, I learn, I really love your content. And I want to have you guys on my various platforms exactly because I want more people to know about you. So I hope to see you guys on some combination of The Hill, The Debrief, bad faith very, very soon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Bree. We'll put you backstage so you have a chance to dip out whenever you want to. And thank you again, Bree, for joining us today. That was a great conversation. It always feels, Nick, like we don't have enough time, and it felt like we didn't have enough time.
I literally cut 2 segments.
Yeah.
I cut 2 segments.
And we didn't even get to her interview today. I have that queued up. The interview she did today, I had queued up about the questions with so hopefully we'll have her back again another 2-3 weeks or so, 4 weeks. We'll try to have her back to just get an update. So, but we have to get out of here. We want to give our audience a few minutes to just have a breather before the Sabby and JB show come up. So on your way out, please like the stream. On your way out, if you want to get notifications for streams like this and others, please join our Substack, and we send those notifications out. Thank you to those that help us hit 22,000. We hit 22,000 late yesterday evening into the night. So thank you for that. I think we're at 22.
We set a high goal of hitting 30,000 by the end of the year, and if we keep this up, we might be able to hit it.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible.
That's good news. So help us out. Keep sharing, liking. We appreciate all the new viewers because that was our goal. If you didn't know, and we on pace. I was like, that's a hard goal to hit, but I think we're
on pace to hit it. So that's all good. We're at hang on a second here. Ooh. Not try again. Oh, the next thing is if you're able to, our activist summit is the last thing I'll remind you about before we sort of head out here. So the activist summit is October 22nd and 23rd. And if you're willing, or if you're an activist or part of an organization and want to be a part of it, just give us an email. And you can put in the subject line, put activist or activist summit. Email us if you're an activist and want to participate in that. We're at 640 likes, and we had over 900 people viewing. So like on your way out. And Nick, that's all I got. Any last words before we dip out of here, Nick?
That's all I have. I got Nico coming on tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So
all right, everybody, no closeout video. We're just gonna dip out, and everybody have a great rest of your day.